Good morning and half a day. The Committee on the Rules is called to order. Or I'm correct. Committee of the Whole, not the Rules. I apologize. Committee of the Whole is called to order, and I thank the colleagues that have joined me this morning: Senator Dwayne Siniclas, Senator Telo Tarigui, and Senator Jesse Lujan, and Senator Barnett. Thank you. Remember, it's Committee of the Whole, okay? Thank you. And with that, we will continue to recess until we do get a quorum. Thank you. We're at recess at this point. Committee of the Whole is called to order. We are still on the Senator Barnett's amendment. I'm going to ask if any of my colleagues would like to speak on it. Senator Nicholas, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I have an amendment to this amendment.
All right.
You know, customs is just as important as GPD, and it's so important, and I understand that it's very important to stop the drugs before they actually even enter the island. So, and just reiterating what the importance of what the speaker had mentioned earlier about retention of our officers and recruiting. And so adding this section, these amendments to this amendment ensures that we also recruit and maintain our customs officers for safety at the border. And ask my colleagues for their support on this amendment. If you don't mind, I'd like to read it out. Please do.
Yeah, just so that you have your amendment written?
Yes, sir. It's already been uploaded.
Okay.
And this is
Senator Nicholas, can you get a printout of that? We're looking for that right now in the system, in the drive. Your amendment.
Supposed to have been uploaded, sir. My staff said that it was uploaded already.
Okay, we're going to check on it.
Thank you. Just a moment's recess.
Yes, a quick recess.
Thank you,
so we
sir.
can find it. Thank you. Committee of the Whole is called back to order. Senator Nicholas, you had the floor.
Yes, sir. So I'm introducing this amendment to add customs to this amendment, and the reason why I'm trying to do this is because I also feel that customs has a problem with retaining its officers, just like everyone else. Every time we fix them up and we let them go to school, we train them, and then guess what? The federal government swoops in and harvests them, you know, and so it's really hard and difficult. And it's so important that we place emphasis on customs officers, because that's where, you know, they're the gatekeepers. If you don't mind me, I'll tell a story. One dark and stormy night, you know, I was called in for overtime, and I was going through the manifests, and I pulled out a box which contained teddy bears. And when I opened up the box, it smelled like coffee. And I squeezed the teddy bear, and guess what? It was crunchy. It's the crunchiest teddy bear I've ever heard in my life. And then we opened it up, and there was 3 huge baggies of methamphetamines, which should, had I not been there and paid attention to what I was doing, those about 3 pounds of meth would have hit the streets and destroyed lives. It's wonderful that we talk about GPD, and I do understand, because I've spoken to the folks out there on the field, the boots on the ground, and they tell me, Senator, something's wrong in our society. You know, crime is on the rise, and I understand that. And I respect that very much, because it takes a lot to be an officer these days out on the streets. But I also do understand that we also have to catch the drugs at the border before they enter the streets, before they, you know, destroy our families. You get them at the border. That's the thing, and it's difficult to retain our officers. I've seen it time and time again. I would always tell our officers at Customs, hang in there. Things are going to get better. Hang in there. Things are going to get better. And I applaud Senator Barnett for championing this with GPD. It's just, I think it stops short of the whole entire system. I think we also need to include corrections officers, because guess what? After it passes customs, after GPD catches them, guess who has to watch them? DEPCOR. And I think they also equally have a problem with retention and recruitment. So I just wanted to see if I can make a difference in this amendment. But under advisement, I was told that maybe it'd be best to be placed on a bill, and I'll assure the public that I will work with everybody in here, so that way we can find a way where we can make retention pay for cops, corrections, and customs. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and with that, I'd like to withdraw this amendment.
Thank you, Senator Nicholas. You won't have to withdraw it. You just spoke on the amendment of Senator Barnett. Anyone else like to speak on the amendment proffered by Senator Barnett? I see no hands. Senator Barnett, Senator Roy.
No, I just wanted to rise in support of this proposed amendment. Certainly, we're trying to find resolve of the numerous issues we've been facing with all law enforcement. So I echo the same sentiments as the previous speaker. You know, it's certainly an issue for us to compete with the federal government and other agencies. I know certainly everyone wants to find greener pastures, only senators don't, right? or still being paid our same salary. But I certainly want to support the efforts in finding better results for our law enforcement and ensure that the next cycles don't inherit the same challenges as the previous cycles, so that we can improve the quality of life for all our law enforcement service members. But nothing further, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to issue my support to the Senator Barnett. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cananta. Senator Tyree.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and good morning to my colleagues. Just a real quick question for the author of the amendment. It has to do with the word, it's on the second page, I believe. This is regards to the performance on satisfactory, I think, is the word that was used. Okay, so the word satisfactory, I think, was, yes, in 77502, the police officer's job performance is satisfactory. It's one of the requirements in order to get the $10,000 every 3 years provided by the following criteria section. You always wonder, what is considered satisfactory? I mean, do we just, satisfactory is just somebody who doesn't get in trouble and, you know, don't do anything and sit there and doesn't do their part, pre-active, but I just want to know what satisfactory.
Is that a question yield to?
Yes, yes,
the
yield
author?
to.
All right, Senator Barnett.
Bananas y todos. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, people of Guam. So, satisfactory is a rating. So when you work in the government of Guam, you conduct your evaluation. There are different ratings, and satisfactory is one. Then you have, I guess, unsatisfactory. And outstanding is the top of the top. So that's it's a rating determination for the employees. And specifically, in this case, the police officer, not only must their job performance be rated satisfactory, they have to have had no history of any disciplinary action involving police misconduct or violations of the laws in Guam, laws of Guam, including but not limited to controlled substance abuse that may have been deferred or diverted. And then again, they must complete the continuing education credits. So I hope that satisfies the senator from Tamoni. Sijos Masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tyree. Does that suffice?
Yeah, I appreciate him answering my question because, you know, I mean, we're giving a $10,000 bonus. I know it's incentive, you know, to keep them from leaving GPT. But I think it's also important that the quality of police officers that we have in GPT are more than just satisfactory. It's a very dangerous job that they're in. There's a lot of accountability that's required of them. And, you know, the whole safety aspect of it. I mean, I appreciate the education, you know, that's needed, you know, to provide whatever equipment there is or resources they have to keep not only the public safe, but themselves safe as well. So I appreciate the answer, and I hope that who's ever the one evaluating these police officers, that they provide a little bit more than just satisfactory. But I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tyree. Anyone else like to speak to this? If not, I'm going to ask Madam Speaker.
So just Masi, Mr. Chair, and good morning, colleagues. I support this amendment, and I'm hoping, based on the public hearing, that this will succeed in its intent, which is to ensure that our police department, our very front line, is can retain some of these recruits that we have invested a lot of money putting in, and retain those very experienced officers who have gained so much knowledge over the years, not just of their skill set, but really of our community. And I remember when former Senator Nelson was here, Talina Nelson, we went to each police precinct and, you know, checked them out, did tours, and commended the officers there. But what I learned in doing that was really how small the number of people who are on duty at a precinct at a certain time really is. It's really almost a handful of people at the most in every precinct on Guam. And of course, that's just way too small for their own safety. It's too small for our community safety. It's too small for them to investigate active crime reports and continue to make an impact or like their presence known throughout that neighborhood. So our neighborhood policing is not going to be as effective if we can't feel their presence at all times in our communities. And that is really because of the small number, I think, of police on duty at each precinct at every hour. We also, learned over the years with oversight hearings and different hearings that the challenges that they face and when they're on duty and they respond to incidences, the time that it really takes to make accurate reports that will be prosecutable, the time that it takes to do a little bit more investigation perhaps while things are fresh, they really don't have that time. Or it's almost a luxury for them to have that time. Their shift ends, they leave it for the next person, and sometimes those are things that, that's what our community's facing. So I think if we really want, and I think, of course, as some of my colleagues have expressed, the high demand for law enforcement officers all over Guam, in the private sector, in the military sector, and in the rest of the government is so high. It's still a huge high demand that our trained police officers with even a little experience are in high demand across the board with sometimes much more favorable conditions. So we'd like to help this situation, and I commend the sponsor for having the hearing on this and really showing that it really takes a dedicated person to be a police officer. When you've got a choice, you can do law enforcement in all kinds of ways, but to be the one who's actually going to patrol the streets and who's actually going to respond to these everyday response, every shift, you're going to respond. To be that person, I think, really takes a special person who really loves our community, dedicated to our community and their families, and let's help them. Let's help them to continue to love that job, to continue to love our community that much that they can put their lives at risk and their whole family's really system at risk and huge sacrifice. I think even this bonus for them is not going to meet the sacrifice that they really actually make, these police officers who are in the field every day for us. So the more we can get, the safer they're going to be, the safer we are all going to be, the faster the response times are going to be, the better the investigations are going to be, and the more we're going to be able to put these people in prison, or if that's what's called for, or to take care of them. So I fully support this amendment, and I really do hope it's effective. I know that across the nation, they are talking about this is a crisis. The recruitment of police officers in particular, it's a crisis across the nation, in every state, and so this is one of the ways that some states are looking to alleviate this issue. So I do hope that this is effective for Guam. And so I hope that we can get reports often from the chief of police if this is really making a difference or not. And so again, I fully support this amendment, and I hope that we can continue to make our police officers, our front lines, feel valued, feel like we want to protect their lives, that we value their lives, and we value the work that they do tremendously for our community. So, situsmasi.
Thank you, Senator, Madam Speaker. Anyone else like to speak? Otherwise, Senator Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too stand in support of this amendment. Even before COVID, one of the most effective ways that an individual can provide for their own personal careers was to work a job for 5 years and then get hired on by somebody else at a much higher pay rate. And I feel like since COVID, this pattern has accelerated, and that people are perhaps waiting 1 or 2 years before they're looking to move on to other much more greener pastures, much more competitive wages. And so I think that this program is prudent in providing a mechanism to try to keep the talent that we're growing here at home and putting all this training and investment in, only for the fruits of that training to be availed of by another jurisdiction. As I look at this retention program, I stand in full support of it, and maybe down the road we look at tweaks and improvements to it. If we're giving money for people who are staying a certain number of years, if we're giving money to people who are staying for 3 years, maybe we give more money to people who stay a whole number of 6. Maybe we have tiered levels down the line for people who are frequent flyers or frequent availers of this program. But the labor problem across the country is not just for police, but it's for all sectors. We are having labor shortages everywhere for every position. And so we have to think long and hard about not just being competitive here locally, but competitive on a global scale, because the federal government has deep pockets and a long reach, and it's hard for us to compete with that. So I think this goes a long way towards helping relieve that problem, and I also commend my colleague Senator Duane for introducing that amendment and committing to including all post commissions into a program like this, because while what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If this is good for GPD, this is good for all of our law enforcement, and we should have programs to retain all of them. And so when that bill comes out, I will come in full support of it, and just like I am full support of this amendment. I believe our law enforcement officers are some of the most important pieces in our civic structure in terms of maintaining public safety and order and preventing us from dipping into chaos. And so anything we can do to keep them here, to keep them invested in our community, I think is a good thing. So I stand in support of this. I ask my colleagues to support this, and I yield the rest of my time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Parkinson. Anyone else like to speak? Senator Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I also rise in support of this amendment. I mean, there's no doubt that this particular amendment, had it gone back to its original form as a bill, would pass the legislature. And it's the positive side of it. Certainly the challenges we're facing in the community now is just the increase of crime. I think the fact that more of our people feel less safe in their own community, which is not something, while we've always had that challenge, it's not something we lived with growing up on Guam. Now it's gotten worse, and part of it, obviously, we know the major factor is a drug problem and all the other challenges as a result of that. I mean, the theft that's happening, I had a friend mention to me the other day that the newspaper is like the daily yearbook in our community for criminals, because that's all you see, that's all you read about these days, or all the crimes that are being committed, or this morning hearing about 2 of the inmates at the Department of Corrections that escaped. We don't feel safe. I'm sure our officers out there that are out there doing this job every day don't feel safe. And it's not just you can't get people to get employed we don't, and granted, as a result of this pandemic and some other challenges we have here on Guam, we have a mass exodus of our working community, the middle class that's normally supporting our economy, that are leaving Guam. But on top of that, you have the decision as, you know, people decide what kind of career they want. I mean, we grew up, we had the books when we were little kids that talked about different careers. You know, did you want to be a stewardess? Did you want to be a teacher? Do you want to be a doctor? You want to be a nurse? You want to be a firefighter? You want to be a police officer? And certainly you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Frank Blas, who had made that decision in life and chose to be a police officer, I'm sure in making that career choice, part of it was, hey, I've got a professional job I can do, but I'm sure you had to weigh the challenges and the burdens, and sometimes I'm sure the fiscal fear of undertaking that job, because you never know what you're going to encounter out there and whether or not you're going to be safe, and your family probably worrying at the end of the day, are you going to come home safe? And we've seen situations where some of our fellow officers out there didn't get to come home. And so it's a tough job all around. And the main purpose, and I hope we don't get in a situation as a result of this bonus plan that we're going to start doing this for all law enforcement, because that's what's happened in the past. Every time there's been an attempt to raise the salaries for the Guam Police Department, you know, it has a domino effect. Everyone's saying, oh, well, the marshals need it, the DOC needs it, everybody needs it. And we should be able to, as leaders, prioritize where the need is most critical and provide support so that we can entice and encourage individuals in our community, the men and women out there that would be interested in law enforcement, of wanting to serve in the Guam Police Department, because that is where the need right now and for quite some time has been the greatest. If you ask our residents out there, I'm sure they're going to be more comforted to want to see a police officer out there patrolling in their villages, and when they need help, having that response. I mean, there were years ago when you try to get a police officer sometimes, unless it was literally a life and death situation, it took hours. If your home was burglarized, you could call at 2 in the afternoon, and you're lucky by midnight a police officer showed up to take your report. But certainly for our people now, it's having that sense of comfort, and it's sad that the need is there, because the crime and the type of crimes that are happening in our community are very bothersome. You know, I don't live too far from Route 4. And even though, you know, you talk about our southern villages, boy, that sound of that siren going off 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, 10, 11 o'clock at night. Sometimes you always wonder, because you got 2, 3, 4 patrol cars going down the road, one after the other, speeding to respond to a situation. And you're going, my goodness, what's going on in our island? So we should be. And colleagues, we just need to be mindful. I'm cautious moving forward, very cautious, because we don't, and certainly we cannot predict the future. But we need to be responsible. We need to prioritize what is most critical, because money right now, while for some of you walking in here, you think, oh, it's there, let's just appropriate. Is that on a few more zeros? We need to be responsible financially with how we're managing the people's money and ensure that it's going to the most critical area. There are a lot of things we'd love to have. So I like shopping at Ross. I'm like, I can afford it. I think I can. But do I need any of it? Probably not, but it's just fun. It's mindless for an hour. But can we buy everything we want? I think we know we need to separate it between what we want and what we actually need. And we definitely need more police officers out on the road. We need more police officer presence. And we need more and more individuals out there that are wanting to dedicate their public service to doing this kind of work, because it is a tough job. The things that you encounter, the things you have to live with, the fact that many of our officers out there don't even get the counseling that they need to keep themselves together. Because some of you may have family members that you know that work for the Guam that are police officers, and what they've encountered psychologically, the impact that they have to live with sometimes. Because there's some things you can't erase in your memory. And they have to respond to that every day. So I certainly support this. I hope we are mindful moving forward in making policy decisions. We need to prioritize. Not that other law enforcement branches of this government are not important. They're important, but the need at the Guam Police Department is more critical. In most cases, you're going to interface with a Guam police officer probably more than any other law enforcement individual, because of the type of work and responsibilities that they have to perform out there. And we've got to be able to provide that incentive in the areas that are more critical, the areas that we're having a difficult time getting officers. or getting these individuals to want to serve in law enforcement, because this is where the need is the greatest. We should be able to provide that incentive so that we can attract them to come and work and be Guam police officers versus other positions in this government that in some cases we're not having as hard a time, just because the desire is there to want to serve in those capacities. But definitely at the top of the list, we need to address that incentive support for the Guam Police Department. So as I mentioned at the very beginning, Mr. Chair, I rise in support of this amendment. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Anyone else like to speak to the amendment? If not, I'd ask Senator Paris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of this amendment. I commend the author for really looking for to really beef up this department, and I think this is great because it's an incentive, right? We want to positively, support them, and it's critical at this time, especially when there's a lot of exodus, right, in the police department, and we don't have a pipeline big enough to replace many that are leaving. And so this incentive program, I think, it did have a public hearing and we're codifying it. I think that's great. I commend the author because, there's so much change that has happened since he came on board to support the police, and very positive programs. And, we know the police, it's a very difficult job, especially with the climate that we're in with the meth epidemic and so many other issues that are facing our island. And we really need to provide this, I think, incentive program to ensure that we stabilize the workforce. And I think it's, I commend the author again, and I rise in full support, and I ask for my colleagues' support for this. It's Masi.
Thank you, Senator Paris. Looking around, I think everybody has spoken on this. Senator Barnett, if you can go ahead and do your closing, and I know you have an amendment.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank my colleagues for their support of the amendment, and just wanted to speak briefly about law enforcement and retention and recruitment challenges. So, as you guys are aware, a number of years ago, law enforcement pay across the board was increased for everybody, and when everyone was increased, it didn't address the disparity that existed between the Guam Police Department and the other law enforcement entities in the government of Guam, whether it's airport police or port police. And so when this disparity wasn't addressed, the Guam Police Department continued to see an exodus of officers. And, I want to thank the administration, as one of the things that they campaigned on was getting more officers on the streets, which we have seen an increase in officers on the streets. But unfortunately, when these officers hit the streets, it's been a struggle to keep them in the department. And I believe that's because we haven't treated the Guam Police Department as the premier law enforcement entity that it is. For the most part, our other law enforcement entities work in secured areas. And the ones who don't, when they make an arrest, it falls back to the Guam Police Department to investigate. Other law enforcement entities don't necessarily have to worry about dealing with drunks, investigating sexual assaults, homicides, burglaries, family violence, traffic accidents, robberies, and any number of crimes. When we see these horrific instances of children being murdered, it's the Guam Police Department that responds as the premier law enforcement entity. When we talk about the struggles that our island has faced with crystal methamphetamine, it's the Guam Police Department that's out there on the front lines dealing with addicts, dealing with the investigations to take down the meth lords. So I think it's, and again, no disrespect to any other law enforcement entity, and I know that we have been talking about losing Guam Police Department officers to the federal government, and that is one issue, but in the number of hearings that we've had with the Chief of Police, Steve Ignacio, what may be a bigger issue is losing Guam Police Department officers to other law enforcement components in the government of Guam. And so with this retention bonus, I think it really kind of seals the deal for the challenges that we're facing with the Guam Police Department, because we look at the crime, we look at the drugs. It's not enough to just talk about those issues. There has to be a solution, and I believe that the solution, again, is getting more officers on the streets. And with this triennial bonus retention program, I believe that we will keep officers on the streets and keep officers in the Guam Police Department. And I think that ultimately benefits our people because, again, it's the Guam Police Department officers who are on the front lines out in the villages, you know, carrying the lion's share of the burden of keeping our island safe. And so I understand where my colleagues are coming from when they talk about wanting to do similar retention bonuses for other law enforcement entities, but I can say with confidence that other law enforcement entities don't necessarily face the same challenges or responsibilities as the Guam Police Department. And again, that's no disrespect to any other law enforcement entity, but GPD does the most and in many ways receives the least compensation. And so again, I thank my colleagues for their support of this amendment. I thank the Chief of Police for his support and the many officers in the Guam Police Department who feel like this is really the last piece to kind of close off the issues that we've been facing with recruitment and retention. And just, you know, real quick, running down some of the other things that we've been able to do with public safety. And for those who are worried about transparency and accountability with law enforcement, and specifically with GPD, this body passed unanimously a measure to implement body cams for the Guam Police Department officers, and that it's going through its second procurement, so hopefully we can get that done. Also, you know, when we started to read about fentanyl, the body also passed measures to put Narcan and make it available where it's needed. And so I think that the 37th Guam Legislature has done meaningful work to kind of chip away at some of these longstanding issues and really come up with solutions for them. And so again, I thank my colleagues for their support of the amendment, and I did have an amendment to my amendment which addresses, well, there was a typo. So my amendment's been passed out, and I'm amending Part 2 of the substitute bill, and it's Part 2 retention bonus for retiring officers. The language is the same until you get to the bottom, and then I strike out right there on number 2. And so it says, the officer was continually employed by GPD for not less than 3 years prior to the date of enactment hereof and had no history of disciplinary action during the 3 years prior to the date of the enactment. And also, a retired police officer, senator from Barragata, had brought up a concern about the impact to the retirement. And so I also have amended this amendment to include a Part 3, which is no inclusion for retirement annuity calculations. The amendment reads, notwithstanding any other provision of law, no portion of the triennial retention bonuses shall be included in the salary of any GPD officer for purposes of adding to the officer's retirement annuity, including the salary of officers who elected non-base pay retirement inclusion prior to March 29th, 1993. The triennial retention bonus is not subject to any employer or employee contributions for the Government of Guam Retirement Fund. And thank you again, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity. I ask my colleagues' support, not just for the amendment, but for the amendments to the amendment. Sidos Masi.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. With that, are there any objection to the amendment, or to the amendment? There being none, are there any objection to the amendment as amended? Let me gavel on the amendment first. There's no objection as amended. Passes. Are there any objection to the amendment as amended? No objection. Amendment passes. We will now move to the next amendment. It's Senator Frank Blas. If I'm correct, FBJ. You're good. Senator Blas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, move to add a new section to Chapter 12 of the bill under the miscellaneous provisions. And this section basically would be able to address there has been a discussion, and there's a discussion from the start, that while this budget bill, as exorbitant as it is, they anticipate excess revenues to be derived. But you know, Mr. Chair, I want to be able to read certain portions of this amendment. There's some research, and I'm going to go ahead and read this. From fiscal year 2019 to the present, the government of Guam has collected over $395 million of taxpayer money in excess of revenues adopted in fiscal year budget acts. This amounts to an average of $65,900,000 per year. In this same period, the operating budget for the government has increased by 27%, and since 2016 to over 30%. Despite the increases in operating budget, the excess revenues were utilized to augment those budgets. In the meantime, taxpayers, both individuals and businesses alike, have been burdened with the increased costs that have resulted in decreased spending and failing businesses. As such, the Legislature finds that in order to balance the needs of the government to operate and the needs of the taxpayers to survive, a cap should be set on the amount of excess funds available through legislative appropriation for government operations, and the remainder to be returned to the taxpayers to ease their financial burdens. Revenues collected in so what this amendment proposes is that revenues collected in excess of $22 million of adopted revenues in this Budget Act and any amendment thereof shall be utilized for programs that will return the excess amounts directly to the taxpayers. These programs can include economic stimulus disbursements for on-island retail purchases only, inflation relief payments, the utility payment reduction program for power, water, and trash collection, and business development or assistance programs. Mr. Chair, I proffer this amendment because, you know, over the last couple of weeks, one of the things that we see is that while this budget reflects just the monies that be collected by the government of Guam through taxes derived and through federal matching, what it does not provide is how much more the government is getting through 100% federal funding. So, colleagues, what we're looking at in this budget here is not a $1.3 billion budget, it's more of a $1.7 billion budget. Okay? That's a far cry from, you know, as far back as 2001, the government of Guam operated with a $446 million budget. In 2011, you know, they started $721,831,000 budget. Now we're looking at a budget twice that size for a government that's a little bit smaller. In the meantime, we're finding it difficult, while we're finding it difficult to be able to fund necessary services, we're forgetting about the community. The very same people, the people that provide through the taxes they pay, the money for this government to operate. And what this body has done, and what this government has done, is taking advantage of that. It's taking advantage of all the times that now, with the increased costs and everything, and with taxes being derived, very difficult for a lot of the people to survive. not necessarily needing government services, but would like to get some of their money back so they can pay their power bill, so they can buy food, so they can gas for their mortgage payments. And so what this provides is basically a cost containment measure for the government of Guam. The ally of this government can continue to operate on $1.7 billion. In the meantime, I don't think it's right for us to be able to continue to take, even if it's excess. If it's excess, give it back to them. And I appreciate that this legislature in the months past has been able to see that in being able to provide credits or to assist in payments for their power bill. But again, what this amendment proposes to do is, instead of anticipating or just taking advantage, just because we've got excess funds above the $1.7 billion we already have to operate with, that we can find the additional monies, or we can use the additional monies from the taxpayers to pay for what the government wants. The people need their money back. And if the government collects more than its share, what this provides is the opportunity to give it back. Now, I recognize that there may be time in extreme cases that the government is going to need to be able to tap into some of the resources. This is why I said, okay, $22 million, that's the cap. But anything in excess of that goes back to the community, goes back to the people where we got it from. So what this amendment does in that, again, is it basically caps the amount of excess revenue that the government can continue to use for its desires, and provide it back to the community who needs their money back. So with that, Mr. Chair, I ask my colleagues for their support. Thank you very much.
Senator Blas, I'm going to call for recess because I was communicating with the legal, because in Chapter 11, we passed will not entertain 24 and 25. If my understanding is correct, and I'm going to recess and get legal, this amendment will impact 25 moving forward. And there's been already requests by several of my colleagues asking for funds for at least 25 or even 24 to help the agencies that are in dire need. So at this point, we'll recess, and let me get legal to give a comment on this one. Thank you. We're on recess at this time. Committee of the Whole is called back to order. Senator Bluss, if you're done, I'll ask if anybody wants to comment. It does not impact anything, and it's not an appropriation. It's just basically a statement that the legislature will be making that anything above 22 forward will have to go to the programs you stated, okay? After 22. Legal advisement that's it's not in conflict with what we did on the 24-25. So with that, anyone like to speak to this amendment? I'm looking for hands. Anybody hands, please raise it. We're going to move along. Nobody? Madam Speaker,
Yes,
please.
thank you. Mr. Chair, if you or the author could yield, so the line that says revenues collected in excess of $22 million of adopted revenues in this budget act, what do we mean by that? Do we mean excess over 22, or because our
If we do this,
all right. Well, as the proffer suggested, you know, I agree with him that this is what we should be using this money for. However, we are facing, and I received another message again this morning from the Guam Memorial Hospital, in dire need of additional appropriations this year. And so, again, we had the fiscal team in here from the governor's office suggesting that we raise the revenue projection instead of calling it excess, that they are predicting that it's going to come in and that we use it. I don't agree with where they suggested we should use it when we have GMH who's still in dire need. I am suggesting that we need to use that for GMH. But if we did that by raising the revenue, it wouldn't be deemed excess and this amendment wouldn't apply to it. However, if we're going to use the excess revenues, as was discussed by an earlier motion where all of our amendments were thrown out until October, this is, it looks to me like will prevent us from using it for GMH, for example, because it says it has to go to directly to taxpayers in these types of programs. Now, it's been my attempt to use it exactly for those things. For if we, you know, are taking care of GMH with funding as we did before, and we are able to still find excess, that we did actually put it towards power credits several times directly to consumers. The same thing with repealing the gas tax. That is a direct benefit for consumers, reducing the GPT for, it sounds like 90% of the businesses. Again, that's supposed to be directly for consumers, but definitely for businesses. The LEAP that we issued here directly to businesses, that was also supposed to help those employees of these businesses that have been severely impacted by COVID and its corresponding decline in tourism. Drastic impacts. We've also put this money towards wastewater hookup assistance and direct assistance to people in need of detox. So I totally agree with the intention. I just think I don't want any language to tie us up, because we need to still address some very critical needs like the hospital, and we need to do it as soon as possible. And I don't want to unintentionally tie our hands from what we can do. And I just think we should all just act consistent with the intent of this amendment, that this is taxpayers' money. It's always been. We need to be very frugal with it. We need to be very deliberate about where it's going to go. And if we need to fix our hospital, we need to fix our hospital. We cannot tie our hands in that way. And if we need to, and if we have enough to help with these direct economic stimulus disbursements, that we do that. And I believe I have acted together with the sponsor of this amendment in that regard on almost every occasion. So I would just suggest that we continue to do that, and we just make those hard calls when we see bills or amendments that are not consistent with this. We're just going to have to say no and keep this philosophy in mind. But I'm just afraid that from right now, I can't tell, whether where this 22 million is going to lie versus what we need for the hospital. So that's why I'm afraid it's going to tie our hands to help GMH. Sizus Masi, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on the amendment? Looking around, Senator Brown.
Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak on this amendment that Senator Blas has put forth. I think it's kind of a reality check, because what we've seen over the last few years as a result of this pandemic, and then also, the unfortunate typhoon that we had last year, was a continued increase of government revenue. What we've also seen is a continued desire of the legislature and the government of Guam to spend almost every penny that we can possibly get, including revenue we've yet to realize. We've seen amendments and bills that have come before this floor to do exactly that. And there's no doubt, there's always going to be a need in government. But what has happened is our government has grown. It's almost tripled since I first came into the Guam Legislature. Tripled. And yet, we go out there and we meet our people, you ask them, or sometimes you don't have to ask them. Sometimes when they see you, they tell you exactly what they think. Is government better? Are they getting better services? Are they getting a friendly welcome to Guam smile every time they have to go deal with the government of Guam? To pay for their car registration or get a permit or whatever the case may be. And yes, we can say, well, we did the power credit. We've done that for almost a couple of years now, and that should be enough. We've given back to our people. Is that really enough, considering the amount of growth that we have continued to sustain? Because I'll tell you one thing, the trend here, if there's a penny to be spent, this legislature, the last two legislatures I've been in, will spend every penny, including that penny before it's even been realized, without reservation, without planning or thinking ahead about the long-term viability and sustainability of even the projects or programs that we're putting forth, whether or not we can sustain this government in the next few years. So much of our economy has been based on, obviously, the military presence and our tourism industry. We don't need to look very far to realize that our tourism industry is nowhere near where it was in 2019. So have we even looked to analyze where is this revenue going to continue to come from? And maybe during this time of excess, maybe that money should go back directly to the taxpayer of Guam, or decrease the amount of taxes that they're paying to this government. Why not? Because if left to the devices of many here, we'd spend every penny. And we may or may not, at the end of the day, have something to show for it. You remember the days back in, as we call, Tempun Ada Blas? Maybe some relation to Senator Blas there. But at the time, the administration did the $1,000 rebate. And a lot of people remember that $1,000 rebate. Maybe $1,000, but wow, I got a $1,000 rebate. I actually got $1,000 back of my tax money that I paid. And I know some of us pay quite a good chunk of change in taxes every year. I'm sure that would be a more direct relief to the people of Guam versus all the things we promised that they're going to get in return for all the money that we're spending on their behalf, all these decisions that we're making. Because I'll tell you, talking to them out there, it's kind of questionable whether do they feel the love? They feel all the wonderful love from all this money we're appropriating? You know, the zeros don't seem to matter. I'll tell you, it probably would matter to us how we're going to spend the next $100 we have in our pocket. But we have no reservation spending the people's money. Put a few more zeros, millions of it. And yet, how are we ensuring the quality of life? Because to me, that's what matters at the end of the day. How's our quality of life? Is it better? People of Guam out there, is your quality of life better today? Government is just such a challenge. I mean, look at us now. Yes, thank goodness, DOE's moving a little harder and a little tougher and getting a little more oversight. All our kids in school today. Speaker brought up Guam Memorial Hospital. Guam Memorial Hospital, same old situation year after year after year. Since I was here, Mr. Chair, serving with your dad. Back then we had to borrow money. Can you imagine that? Borrowing money on the bond market? Borrowing money to make payroll? 30-year loans for next week's paycheck? That's never ending. That story is never ending. Will never be ending until we change the management of the Guam Memorial Hospital. Till we ensure effective and efficiency. Because there's some people making an awful lot of money at GMH. Give me another day assignment so I got 2 or 3 jobs so I can make $600-700 grand a year. Any guarantee the people of Guam are getting better health care? I don't think so. So probably in this time of excess, because I'll tell you, I don't feel it. And I don't get a lot of feedback from people that run into me and tell me their opinion. Do they feel it? Unless they happen to work for the government of Guam and happen to have, gotten a 22% pay raise. A lot of people out there ain't feeling it. But I think this is a responsible way we could actually give something back to the taxpayer and let them decide how they want to spend their money. Because there's still a lot of people out there that are challenged, that are still working hard every day, and I'll tell you, they just ain't making it. If it ain't the mortgage payment, the rental, the car payment, the gas, the food bill, and I know we've all seen that increase in our visits, Senator Frank, to Happy Mart, our meeting place, waiting for the new one to open. You get just a few items and it's like $130. Lana, is that going to take care of dinner today and tomorrow? So why not? People might think it was a little radical. I'm like, why not? It's happened before. It happened, 35 years ago, and people still remember it who were here. They got their $1,000 rebate. And they can probably decide how more responsibly they want to spend it to improve what is the most important to me, their quality of life. Because I don't know that we're doing through all this stuff a better job. I don't know at the end of the day yet, with all these appropriations, that we're making the people of Guam's life better, safer, healthier. So I definitely support this amendment. I support the efforts of my colleague to bring something forth that actually would have a direct benefit to the people of Guam that we all claim we're supposed to be serving. Why not give them some of this money back? Especially when you're talking excess. Boy, when did we add that to the vocabulary at the Guam Legislature? Excess revenue. Because it ain't going to last, Mr. Chair. You know that. All the old timers here know it ain't going to last. The party's going to be over. And the bills are going to be there. And God help that legislature. Good luck to them. When they have to start cutting. When they have to start cutting into the flesh. When they all of a sudden have to say no, when they're struggling to make payroll. Because I've never seen this government grow as much as it has. It's grown almost $400 million in the last 6 years. And people of Guam got to ask themselves, with all of that, are their lives better? Well, this particular amendment, Mr. Chair, I think is a certain more direct way that they can decide how they want to spend their money. So I definitely rise in support of this amendment introduced by Senator Blas. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Titagui?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me. And, you know, I read this amendment yesterday and was talking to the author of the amendment, explaining what is this going to do currently, especially in this budget bill, current budget bill, we've already appropriated some of the excess revenue for FY2025. We looked at, yes, I believe it's $9 million going to Chamorro Land Trust for excess revenue in FY2025. We've also appropriated excess revenue in 25 for DICIT. And if I can, Mr. Chair, there is a running balance right now that's moving forward. If we could ask OFB what that balance is currently. And this is excess revenue for FY25. Not 24, 25.
Yes, Senator. So far, what we're tracking based on the amendments that passes, 9,573,197.
9 million so far. So I was concerned because of that, but I did notice that the amount that we are to basically stop any other appropriations unless it's for these other areas is at 22 million. So there's still, you know, some funding that we can appropriate to other areas, you know, if need be. So I agree with the intent on where this is going into the public's hands. But I truly believe that our hospital is in desperate need of funding. We're getting messages too about they just don't know how they're going to survive with the budget that was given to them. They're going to have to cut services, certain services. So that being said, Mr. Chair, understanding the great need of our only public hospital, I would like to make an amendment, and I did talk to the author of this amendment, to incorporate, and that would be, it's just very simple sentence, and it's to include, it's the last sentence, Mr. Chair, of the amendment. These programs can include economic stimulus, reimbursement for on-island retail purchases only, inflation relief payments, utility, etc. So where I would like to include public health, including but not limited to the GMHA, and that will start at these programs can include, and then insert public health, including but not limited to GMHA, comma, then economic stimulus reimbursements for on-island retail purchases only, inflation relief payments, etc. down the line. So it's just an inclusion of that. And we all know that in public health, there are many areas and departments that deal directly with providing food, issuance of food, public housing for individuals. I believe this is totally in the rim of what the author of this amendment is looking for, that moving forward, any excess revenue goes directly to our people to assist them. So I did seek legal's advice as well, Mr. Chair, before incorporating that amendment to the amendment. And that's where I would put it in. So again, once again, Mr. Chair, it would be included, right after the word included on the last sentence, these programs can include, and then this is where we insert public health, including but not limited to GMHA, comma. Then it continues on with economic stimulus reimbursements for on-island retail purchases, etc.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand that clearly you're not specific, it's public health in general statement, so that it'll impact GMH. I have no problem.
And not to.
But not limited
yeah.
to.
And
Understood.
also includes GMH, you know,
Yes.
as a,
Okay, does anyone have any objection to that amendment, to the amendment? Madam Speaker.
Jesus Masi, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the author of that amendment. I think that's another good way to handle it, I guess, to ensure that any excess 25 revenues can still be used for public health concerns, including GMH, which that's, I think, really our #1 concern at this point. So the budget that we've given GMH is $37 million for FY25. In FY24, we gave them $32 million. They came back within a month saying they needed $30 million more to pay vendors. That's like 60-some million. They received $50 million from the governor in ARP. They're using all of that money. So the budget of $37 million for FY25, I think it's very obvious it's going to be short for them. And they need to know now, as early as possible, what it's going to look like for them for FY25, because as they present it to us in their budget discussions, they're going to cut services if this is what they want to plan, and they want to make it as professional as possible, as opposed to leaving people hanging on that day. They need to plan, they need to make announcements as to what services they will and will not be able to provide for the upcoming fiscal year. I think the administrator was telling me that they are actually in debt to the travel nursing company, and are being told that if they can't pay this debt right away, they are not going to be able to continue to hire travel nurses. Without travel nurses, unfortunately, our nurses component at GMH is critically short. We will not be able to keep the beds open. And I'm still kind of mind blown about the presentation that we were given as to which parts of the hospital they would have to close. They talked about ICU, telemetry, and other very, very critical services. So I again thank the author of this amendment to the amendment for this.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to the amendment? So we could just Senator Blas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, Mr. Chair, the thing about this body is politics is the art of compromise, okay? And it's not so much a compromise. This is a recognition of if we need to be able to spend this, if we have to, and within, a community concern, what is the best value for the community? It's being able to provide them that assurance that if they need to get some medical care, they're going to get it. So I wholeheartedly support this amendment to the amendment. Mr. Chair, let me tell you the emphasis first off. I've been asked, okay, where did it come about $22 million as the cutoff point? Well, that $22 million represents 1/3 of what this government, we continue to collect in excess on average. And granted that over the last couple of fiscal years has been growing higher than that. But that said too, is recognizing that this money belongs to the people. When the government has a desire or doesn't even think about where the money comes from and continues to spend it the way it is, I don't see why we need to have this conversation or why we're having this conversation of what GMH's needs are. But I see when it happens that first off, this administration didn't even think about wanting to be able to fund that fully. Sometimes you begin to wonder, okay, have we funded first? Did they want to fund first their priorities over what is necessary that this government provide to the community? It seems to be the case. Because in order to be able to try to meet the needs of what is necessary that the government provides to the community, the Office of Finance and Budget had to go and scrounge and find for additional funding to be able to do this. Still not enough. Still not enough within the projections. And why? Let's take a look. If you take a look at this budget and where a lot of the money went to, and you break it down between want and need, you're going to find it was more of a want than a need in many cases. And I appreciate and applaud, Mr. Chair, your office and the Office of Finance and Budget on being able to try to recognize a lot of these needs. To recognize the needs, the failure of the administration to be able to do this. But at the same time, we've got to recognize as a government that we serve the people. It's the people that we serve. We belong to the people. And in serving the people, let's not take advantage of what the people provide so that they can get the necessities of government. I think every taxpayer knows that their taxes, the monies that the government collects for them, should be going back to making their lives better. But as was stated by the gentle lady from Pago Bay, walk into Happy Mart today and ask the first customer, how's life? Is life better for you over the last 4 years than it's been? I'll tell you no. Ask people how confident they are of being able to walk into the Guam Memorial Hospital. And they'll tell you. Again, let's remember where we're getting our taxes from. That's where we're getting our revenues from. It's from the people. Okay. And there's amendment to the amendment to be able to ensure that there is a priority that needs to be placed, yes, on health care. That's a necessity that the community wants. That's a necessity that the community expects us to provide. And if the administration doesn't want to do it, we'll do it here. So I support this amendment to the amendment. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Bless you, Senator Parks. Anyone else like to speak? If not, can you close, Senator Tyree?
It's okay, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Thank
any
you.
objection to the amendment to the amendment? There being none, amendment passes. Now back to the amendment as amended. Senator Duenas.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, and I certainly support the amendment and just wanted to make a few comments. This really is in the spirit of what we did when we decided to deal with excess revenue in 2024 and projected excess revenue in 2025. And I applaud our minority leader for finding a way to realize what is that median number, if you will. And, of course, the subsequent amendment to the amendment. The bottom line, Mr. Chair, is I take a different approach from a comment made earlier about the amendments were thrown out that were prepared in Chapter 11. No, they weren't. They were carried forward to your commitment of a supplemental appropriation so we can do exactly what this amendment calls for. What are your priorities? And like the mover said, it is the people's money. And we do hear that consistently. Now, we certainly have, Mr. Chairman, and I applaud the members of this body as long as myself, when I voted for those motions to do the rebates on power. But that is where the discussion should be. And what is our priority? And we have to prove to the people that if we've underfunded somewhere and that priority is there, we've got to put that funding there. If we have not identified adequately within the budget to fund stronger, in a more strong way our priorities, then they're going to tell us. Then move money. Move money, take care of your priorities. And then when you get to the 22 million in excess of adopted revenues, think about us. And at some point, Mr. Chairman, it might not always be a power credit. GPA's saying 90% complete of Ukudu. With that and all the solar coming online, and we're praying that they're correct, our bills should come down exponentially. It may be tax rebates. It may be helping businesses. But the general position that I hear from most people that I meet, like the mover of this amendment said, no matter what store it is, or what hardware store it is, or what lunch line you're in, is the government's continuing to grow at an exponential rate, and we, the people out here, aren't necessarily feeling it. So once again, Mr. Chairman, nothing was thrown out. It was moved to an area where we discuss responsibly with the people. What are we going to do with your money? We need to remember that. Every time we're making motions here, we're not using our money. We're using the money of the people who've entrusted us to sit here and represent them. And that, Mr. Chairman, should reflect the entirety of our community. And that, Mr. Chairman, should make us have to present it to them as our board of directors and say, this is how we're going to spend your money. And this is how we're going to tell you when we keep increasing money within the government that your services are not only going to be adequate, but they're going to be better. Because once again, like I said in the end, Mr. Chairman, it's their money. So with that, I certainly rise in support of this amendment. It establishes a very, very strong, adequate baseline of what we should be able to realize as dealing with our priorities with excess revenues. It balances what we've been doing basically on a kind of on-the-fly way, which is good. Everybody's paying that expensive power, and everybody's using every penny of that for a different purpose, I'm sure, which helps our economy as well. But there are eventually going to be competing interests, and there's eventually going to be a demand that we report to the people that they're receiving the services for now, as my good colleague said, with federal resources, a $1.7 billion budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Senator Nicholas, you want to speak on the amendment as amended?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, thank you. Anytime that there's an opportunity to return the funds that we collected in excess to the people of Guam is always a wonderful idea. And I too, and everybody here, you know, has felt the inflation and just the cost of living on Guam, and yes, you know, this, in spite of all that, you know, our people just seem to just keep chugging it along. But anytime you can return money back to them, as long as what we're doing is responsible and we've covered all our expenses, and anything in excess, I think, should be returned to the people. I think it's the best way. It's the only way I think we should. And I applaud the author for proffering the amendment. Anytime we've realized excess gains, I think it should be returned to the people, and it's a wonderful thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Stiglitz. Senator, no one else, I don't see any hands. Senator Blas, you want to, Senator Lujan? Por favor, colleagues, raise your hand quickly so we can move along, okay? Thank you. Thank you, Senator Lujan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, colleagues. No, I rise full support of this amendment. You know, everything that has been said is actually true, but you know, Mr. Chairman, nobody spends somebody else's money as carefully as he spends his own. Giving back the excess money to the people, it's the right thing. And not only that, because when you look at, they're going to spend it. And you're going to have that tax money coming in, so the government is going to collect even more than you had dished out. You give people back their money, they're going to spend it. And those tax dollars are going to roll in even more. They're careful about their spending, but they'll spend it in the necessities that they've been waiting to have for a while. People know what to do with their money. So with that, in short, Mr. Chairman, I rise in full support. And again, I want to reiterate that nobody spends somebody else's money as carefully as he spends his own. Those tax dollars are rolling. You give them you give the people the excess in what they paid. It'll come back threefold. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Lujan. I see no other hands. Senator Blas, you want to go ahead and close on your amendment as amended?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank my colleagues for their presentation and their addition to make this a stronger and a better amendment, quite honestly. Again, I need to reemphasize the fact, okay? This is the people's money. And we've got to stop basically thinking that we can spend it on a whim without considering what their needs are. You know, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chair, I remember, as you know, several of my colleagues here, Senator Dueñas, Senator Lujan, Senator Tello, Senator Joanne, Senator Barnes, times during the budget session when there was no such thing as an anticipation for excess funds. That we had to be very cautious about how we project the revenues. And be mindful that part of the stuff, part of our budget had to be going down to pay for things that we didn't have money for in the past. And let's be honest with regards to where this revenue, excess revenue is coming from. Okay, no, I got 8 minutes and 22 seconds, don't try that. Okay? Let's remind as to where this money is coming from. Okay? This money is basically coming from a source that in a few years is basically going to run out. And we're going to have to go back to relying on, first off, what we needed to sustain or maintain for ourselves in the past, and what we try to do to build for the future. Tourism is still down 50%. Yet, at one point in time, tourism made up 60% of our budget. Congress right now, doesn't matter what side of Congress you were, what party you were with, they're looking at ways to be able to address the deficit that exists within the federal government. And what were they doing? they're looking back at pulling back some of the funds. Case in point, colleagues, look at the budget digest. Okay? From last year to this year, there was almost a $200 million decrease in federal funding. On monies that at one point in time we relied on because it was going to be there. It's not there anymore. What's going to be next year? So if we continue to grow the government because of what we desire or what we want as opposed to what we need to provide to the community, is that the best way to spend the money? And when you've got more money than you need, like I said, $1.7 billion. And let the community figure out, where do we spend the money? Where was the money spent? And compare it to your expectation of what kind of government services you're getting. The numbers don't add up. You know, one of my favorite sayings when we're dealing with an issue is, what has it got to do with the price of Tang and Happy Mart? This amendment addresses that because it does affect the price of Tang and Happy Mart. Tang went up, but the spending power of the people have gone down. When is this government going to learn that? In the meantime, this will help to start to correct that. This complements, as a matter of fact, I didn't do it yesterday, I'm going to do it today. I want to thank my colleague over here, the Senator from Tamuning, and his amendment and your commitment, sir, to be able to look at being able to prioritize the things that we need to do with the monies that we have. That's what our people expect. Because one of these days, we don't want to go back to those days of having to figure out, okay, just how much do we have to spend, use for government, and how much do we have to pay back? This money belongs to the people. Government shouldn't think it's all theirs to be able to spend. $1.7 billion, I believe that the government has enough to be able to take care of its needs. You may have to decide, you know, Mr. Chair, it's kind of interesting. About 40 miles to the north of us, you got another government that right now is still working on reduced hours for its government employees, trying to figure out the retirement. The cost of living is going sky high up there. Their economy is flailing. And here, it's like another day in the park. So with that, again, thank you to my colleagues who contributed and to this amendment, said good things about it. And I ask for my colleagues for their support on this amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Blades. Is there any objection to the amendment as amended? There being none, oh, beg your pardon? You're objecting to it? Okay, we have one objection. All in favor of the amendment as amended, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion passes. My colleagues, we're going to take a 5-minute recess, just a 5-minute recess. Thank you. Committee Hall is called back to order. We now move to the amendment proffered by Senator Amanda Shelton, but be spoken by Senator Roy Caneta. Continue appropriation authorization for Department of Youth Affairs. Senator Roy.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Senator Parkinson.
You know, we're kind of coming up here against time, and I was wondering if I could make a motion to reduce our speaking time on these amendments to 5 minutes.
There's a motion on the floor, reduce our time from 10 to 5 speaking. Are there any objections to that motion? You have an objection? Oh, I beg your pardon?
I'm objecting, Mr. Chair.
Okay. There's a motion, reduce the speaking time from 10 minutes to 5. There is an objection. All in favor of that motion, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion failed. Senator Caneta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to discuss this amendment, which is, if approved, authorizes DYA to access unused funds from FY 2024. Similar amendments were approved by this body, which allowed DYA to carry over its unexpended funds from FY 2021, FY 2022, FY 2023, and for previous years. So it's just in line with other appropriations and the authorization for notwithstanding any other provision of law allotted to the unexpended balance of funds appropriated to Department of Youth Affairs 2024 and prior shall not lapse and shall be expended by the end of the fiscal year 2025. On page 140, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Caneta. Senator Brown, speak on the amendment.
I wanted to inquire, Mr. Chair, as we did with other desires to allow these lapse funds. Again, this is another new addition to the world in the legislature. How much money are we talking about? If Finance can let us know what these amounts are.
And what I'll do is I'll report it back again, the amounts, okay? For each amendment coming up. For DYA? Senator Brown, there is approximately $2 million, and right now the purpose for that is for the construction of their building and their the administration building and for sanctuary, contracts with sanctuary.
So is that primarily what this remaining $2 million is dedicated for, is this building?
That's correct.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Senator Blas?
Along those same lines, Mr. Chair, so this carryover would ensure that it would stay for those purposes?
For the purpose that it's being done, yes.
Just making sure.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, you want to close, Senator Caneta? If not, are there any objection to this amendment? There being none, amendment passes. We'll now move to the next one. The next one is introduced by Madam Speaker. I think TMT, right? No, you're not TMT. You have to amend Section 26 of Chapter 12 of the bill to read Social Worker versus Child Protective Service and Community Program Aids, Department of Public Health? No? If not, we'll just continue. All right, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is at the request of Public Health. They would like, they're using community program aids right now to, in the children's shelters. At least this is their plan in order to get the social workers out of the shelters and back to their regular duties while they're still pending a contract for services at the shelter, they have been hiring these community service workers. So this is at their request to allow this contract hire for them, or this, shoot. Sorry, give me 1 second, Mr. Chair. It is, yeah, I believe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Are there anyone want to speak on this? If not, are there any objection? No objection? Amendment passes. Now we're on the next one. Senator Taddewy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, this next one is a addition to Chapter 12 of the bill section based on once it's, or, well, figured out what section it goes in. Anyways, the University of Guam shall utilize from its FY2025 appropriations the amount of $1,627,126 to fund the operation of the Guam Cultural Repository. The Guam Cultural Repository shall submit a written report to Speaker of Legislature in Guåhan at the end of each quarter for fiscal year 2025, which shall include all expenditures and encumbrances of the of the fiscal year 2025 appropriation. Mr. Chair, this amendment is just to ensure that the Guam Repository receives the funding, which they have an MOU between the University of Guam and the repository, which is actually under the governor's office. So this amount here could be reflected in the amount of, I'm showing here on the spreadsheet, by the way, Mr. Chair, $3,681,335 increase to the University of Guam. But I just wanted to verify, is that correct? Because I did speak with somebody in OFB earlier, and I believe the increase to the University of Guam was actually $5 million. Can you please verify if it's $5 million or is it $3.6 million that was increased?
Stand by, Senator Taddewy. OFB?
And of course, Mr. Chair, this is not including the federal funds, just government.
That's correct.
General fund
just
money.
the general fund increase.
$10 million.
The increase over FY24 level for University of Guam is 5.3 million, but that includes all the pass-through appropriations made to the university.
Okay, so it was 3, yeah, because on the spreadsheet it's showing 3, but thank you for that clarification. So they did get an increase of $5.3 million. So I ask my colleagues for their support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, is there any objection to the, anyone like to speak? If not, Senator Canata.
I just wanted to clarify, this is to fund warm bodies in the building?
I think that this is for operation, yes.
Okay, I have no objection to this, and I rise in full support of the previous speaker. Certainly, as the oversight chair for Guam Historic Preservation, I rise in full support, and I'm thankful for this amendment.
All right, thank you. I see no other hands. Are there, do you need to close? No. Are there any objection to this amendment? No objection. The amendment passes. We now move to the next one, which is Vice Speaker.
Sidus Mosi, Mr. Chair, Manana Sidus. This next amendment is a very short amendment, and I'm proffering it at the request, Mr. Chair, of the Director of Administration, who informed me of the critical need to have this department hire an agency for the upcoming fiscal year. It reads to page 134, line 10, to amend Chapter 12, Section 26 of the bill to read S, the Chief Financial Officer and Agency Counsel for the Department of Administration, and Mr. Chair, to also allow legal to make the technical changes and to renumber. Mr. Chairman and colleagues, according to the Director of DOA, Mr. Byrne, the Agency Counsel will be tasked with HR matters like updating of the rules and regulations and representing DOA in the Civil Service Commission due to the OAG, the Office of the Attorney General, no longer doing so for accounting tasks such as the payment of court orders, and to assist the director with contract review, FOIA requests, and the review of legislation proffered by this body. So I'm asking my colleagues to please support this additional language, because without it, DOA would not have the legal support to properly research and respond to highly technical matters in which mistakes could cost taxpayers funds through court challenges and the CSC ruling. So I'm hoping my colleagues could help us support this amendment.
Thank you, Madam Vice. Anyone would like to speak to this? Madam Speaker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this amendment is in the section that allows for hiring of unclassified employees. And so I'm looking through the list. This is an exception to our merit law, which is in our Organic Act, that says all employees shall be merit-based. That's, and then we've made these exceptions. There are some in the code, and then these in every budget law we have a list. But I'm not finding, well, so in subsection, this is an amendment to subsection S, where even last year we made an amendment that the chief financial officer for DOE shall be unclassified. Subsection R allows unclassified senior law clerks in a certain pay grade and law clerks. But I don't see this for lawyers. And I'm just not sure. We have another law that says all about how lawyers will be hired, I guess, and that for agencies. And I know that there is a position in DOA for the procurement officer. I'm trying to remember what it's called, like procurement council. And we talked about that when we talked about the conflict with the AG's office. However, yeah, to hire another counsel in this department without further discussing this, Mr. Chair, I'm just not sure, because I think it's going to conflict again with the AG's authority. That counsel goes through the AG's office. They represent the agencies. So it's just not clear. This is a quick amendment, but it's not, to me, it's a more complex issue than that we should just get some more input on, I think. Because if there is an issue with the AG, I think that needs to be spelled out more, and what is not resolved at this point. My understanding is the Attorney General still does represent agencies at the civil service. And this is, so I really, I understand the intent of the amendment, but I'm afraid I can't support it, because I think it's going to conflict with our other law and previous case law.
Mr. Chair, on a point of information, please, respectfully.
All right, point of information.
Yes, this amendment, again, was proffered based on the request by the administrator, Mr. Byrne, when he was in here speaking to us on this budget. And I know that we've done amendments that was proffered earlier at the request from Public Health. This position is not focused on procurement, as Mr. Byrne noted during this budget, that the Office of the Attorney General is not representing them for the CSC cases. So I'm just, again, it was something that was brought up in this conversation during this time, and I know we've done it, like the one that was proffered earlier for Public Health, and I just think that we can look at this and support the efforts of getting at least some kind of counsel for the Department Administration.
All right.
Yes, again, I guess I had the floor when she made that point of information.
Yes, important information,
Yeah,
yes.
so I don't doubt that they want one and that they need counsel. Of course, in civil service cases, the agencies need counsel. Many agencies, in fact, are asking us to help them, independent of the AG's office, get counsel. The problem is we have statutes in place that are very, very clear, and you know, it's been argued the Attorney General, the Chief Legal Officer of the government of Guam, is supposed to represent the government of Guam in cases, particularly in, you know, litigation. And I think civil service arguably is, these hearings potentially lead to litigation. And so, in fact, when we just saw the settlement recently at Civil Service for the Department of Corrections, remember that settlement that we saw on the front page of the paper? My understanding is the AG's office was involved in that. So they are representing agencies, and I just don't want to say we're going to allow, by this amendment that says, it's really an amendment that says they can hire these people on class. I don't think that's allowed anywhere else. They're hired either by contract or they're hired classified. Or I'm not sure. And I just don't want to be inconsistent with one agency and then we have a whole other set of problems. So for this one, if it can wait, I would just suggest we do this by separate bill. Let's flush it out. Additional issue, then let them hire. I think there are other agencies that want to hire as well. They're prevented, they have been told, by laws and by organic act that prevents them from hiring without consent of the Attorney General's office.
All right,
And
thank you.
this is not the same as either as the Procurement Council that is authorized by statute as a classified employee, it looks like, in the Department of Administration. So this would be additional, and that's not clear either. It just says agency counsel. Doesn't say for which part of this agency, the procurement or the civil service. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, but I just want to make very clear that even DRT has 3 right now. I don't know if they're unclassified or classified. But moving along.
That's authorized by statute, Mr. Chair,
Understood.
a public law that was passed.
I'm just saying that. Okay, let's move along. You already objected to it. Anyone else would like to speak to this? None? Santini, you want to close so that we can move? We do have an objection.
Yes, and again, sir, like I noted earlier, it's not like this hasn't been done before. At the request of the director, needing that counsel and the criticalness of the Department of Administration, I think that this is important, and I only humbly ask that our colleagues support the same. It's not easy when you're not getting the support. Maybe some agencies, but not all, and I'm just saying that I didn't request for this. This is proffered by the at the request of the administrator. So I'm hoping that my colleagues would at least give the decency to and the consideration for Department of Administration to hire that. And thank you.
Thank you. There is an objection. All in favor, please raise your hand for this amendment. Motion fails. We move now to the next amendment. Senator Tadegui, you have one for OVA, Office of Veterans Affairs.
Oops. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Okay, I have it right here. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a continuation and appropriation authorization for the Guam Office of Veterans Affairs. Notwithstanding any of the provisions of law, the allotted but unexpended balance of funds appropriated to the Guam Office of Veterans Affairs for fiscal year FY2024 and prior shall not lapse and shall be available until fully expended, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right, currently it's about $400-some-thousand right now. Okay. Remember, that number does not include the bills we passed this year.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak to this? If not, are there any objection to this motion? No, there's no objection. This amendment passes. Senator Brown, your amendment? Civil Service Commission stipends?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually proposed this amendment because I think this issue should go up for a public hearing. I mean, you're looking at least the proposer, whoever moved this in the budget, is looking at increasing these annual meetings to, or their regular monthly meetings to $100 and up to $1,000 a month. And I just think that matter, I mean, considering some of the decisions that have been made by the Civil Service Commission, I've mentioned OFA, and I have a love-hate relationship with the Civil Service Commission and some of their rulings. I think the most recent one that we've heard about, you know, your eyebrows either went up or your jaw dropped. You got to wonder. I don't know what's so difficult in our government of ensuring that all our public officials, no matter what capacity they hold, are ensuring that they're acting responsibly, and when they choose not to, that they should be held accountable. They should not be rewarded by the people of Guam for doing things, some of these things downright illegal, that they should not be doing, that harms our community. I mean, it's almost the situation, the system is almost set up that it's good to violate the law, it's good to not be a responsible employee, it's good to steal, it's good to cheat, it's good to lie, and in return, if you go to Civil Service Commission, get a good attorney, then you both make out. And who's left holding the bag? You got to wonder some of these decisions. I think that requires probably reevaluation of the Civil Service Commission and the work that they're doing, because they're also supposed to ensure the interests of the public. And I've had my share of sitting before the Civil Service Commission, and sometimes I got to wonder, you know, how untouched they are by influence, or ensuring that we have a responsible government, that people are performing their jobs and doing the right thing. Why is that so complicated these days? Especially when you've been given the opportunity by the people of Guam to have a job that gives you a livelihood, that allows you to take care of your family. I think that's what most people strive for, that want to do good things. They work so they can take care of their family, of course themselves as well. But there are others that depend on them. And then they take that authority that's been given to them and they abuse it. Especially at this time in our community when we're worried about the influence of illegal drugs that are coming into our people. We see it every single day. Our people suffer, including those that aren't on drugs, because they become victimized by the process. And when it's your government official on top of that that's doing it, and then what does the commission do? They reward these people. Let's find another technical. They can make all the mistakes in the world, but oh my God, we missed by one day. The whole system is set up to make sure you can get away with it. Certainly that's why, Mr. Chair, when we do have our next regular session, I'm going to move official misconduct, my bill on official misconduct again. Because I'll tell you, I don't understand what's so difficult in this legislature. I mean, do we have friends that have been convicted of official misconduct that we want to pave the red carpet for? We know some who have. Because I'll tell you, if you're connected to those that are connected, you're connected. Things get taken care of for you, no matter what you've done, no matter what harm you've brought. And there should be consequence to that. Because who suffers? All we got to do, open the paper today, open it tomorrow, open it 3 weeks from now, people. Wake up. This ain't no Guam that we grew up in. My goodness, we can't even let our children go out to play anymore. And we grew up with the ability to do that. Get on our bikes and ride as far as we can go. I can't even let my child out of my sight in this community here. But when we don't hold people accountable for the wrong that they've done and the harm they brought to our people, then it becomes a standard and becomes acceptable. And when you bring it up, hey, they don't talk about it, say, Dana, that's our cousin. That's our friend. That's the person connected to the most connected. And we got to kiss up to those people. So I think this issue here with regards to Civil Service Commission, I'm really raising my eyebrow on. We need to review what their authorities are and what the requirements are. And you know what? At some point, when you make these kind of big mistakes that really harm our community, then there should be no second chance. There should be no accommodation. Because some of these crimes that have been committed against our people by public officials who abuse their authority, they take the power of the people and they go back and abuse their own people. That should not be okay. I don't know what family we're raised in, but that wasn't family I was raised in, and most of my influence is right here on this island from my Chamorro family. So I think that if we want to, I don't know why we got to stick things in this budget bill that really aren't connected to the budget, and we want to do these increases that used to be public service, and now, my goodness, we should quit being in the legislature. I think I'm going to make more money in the commission here. This issue should go for public hearing and have the people of Guam testify, and if they say, hey, yeah, we want to do this, and so be it. But to start sticking things like this, shall we reward the commission members now for their great decisions? Because I don't know, people of Guam, you walking around happy about the latest decision? You can get convicted for something, and then the commission, no, let me take care, let me pay you back, and let me pay your attorney. Who's the scam on, really, at the end of the day? So I'm putting this forth, Mr. Chairman, because I believe this matter should go up for public hearing before we start just raising these compensations that we're providing to the Civil Service Commission. I think with everything happening, we should do that. So that's why I'm putting this amendment forth, and I hope I get support from my colleagues.
Now, Senator Brown, your amendment is to delete. We need to hear that for the records, to delete section 42 of chapter 11.
Yes, I don't need to say it. It's there. It's to delete it, remove it from the budget bill, put it, if anyone's got a big advocate for this and wants to wrap their name all around it, then put it up for public hearing, and let's get some public feedback about this particular issue.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I do have a bill, and so does Senator Parkinson. We'll be hearing it soon. Anyone else like to speak to this amendment? Senator Fisher first, and then followed by Senator Blas.
Thank you very much, sir. I was listening to my friend speaking about the offering of this amendment, and it occurs to me, if we don't like a decision that an adjudicative body makes, for example, that is the function of the Civil Service Commission to make decisions when there are disagreements between employers and employees. And the Civil Service Commission, by the way, is a great thing. The Civil Service Commission is designed to prevent the worst abuses of the spoils system. It exists to give employees the ability to know that they at least have some sort of appeal for a firing. They at least have some sort of a mechanism to cure misbehavior by management. There are many different ways that they can get before the commission to right a wrong. So hats off to the Civil Service Commission. How many hundreds, perhaps thousands of employees of the government of Guam have they protected, not merely by action, but just by being? That's kind of I guess it's a long wind-up to my real point, which is if we disagree with an adjudicative body's decision, well, that's the way it is. In these sorts of systems, somebody wins and somebody loses. And that happens in front of the Civil Service Commission, and if we are disappointed in the Civil Service Commission's decision, I think that we should speak out and say that I don't like that decision, but to defund the commission and the commissioners, just basically take all the money that they would have gotten for attending, that is, I don't know, it's just peculiar. Would we defund the judiciary if we didn't like if we didn't like one of their decisions?
Mr. Chairman, point of information here. We're not defunding the commission. We're not giving, which the existing language in the budget bill would give them an increase to their stipends. So I just want to clarify that. This is not an amendment to defund the Civil Service Commission.
Thank you. Okay. Senator Fisher?
Yes, thank you. I think that's a fair observation. But if we adopt the amendment, as my friend puts forward, we will end up with a commission that is not getting compensated. And unless they just have very generous hearts, they probably won't be showing up for these commission meetings. But just to kind of, continue to speak a little bit about my earlier point, many of us, all of us, become disappointed when the government doesn't see things our ways. But we wouldn't ever defund the entire government, or we wouldn't say that, we don't like what the senators are doing, and okay, so we're just not going to pay them anymore. Well, you won't find too many people that want to fill that position. And you certainly wouldn't find people throughout the rest of the government of Guam that if, we didn't pay them just because we're mad at them and the way they are, executing their business, I think is not the way to move forward. Well, I guess that's all I have to say on it. I just don't see that we can punish a body for making decisions which we have asked them to make. So, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Senator Blas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I stand in support of this amendment. And just the point of clarification, all this amendment does is basically remove this provision from the budget, from the bill. It does not delete what already exists, that currently exists in the Guam Code annotated, just to make sure that's known. But Mr. Chair, in line with this is basically, it goes back to conversations that we've had. Over the last couple of years, there has been, increases in this and increases of that, basically done by a stroke of a pen. And sometimes, when you look at it, it says, okay, under what authority was that provided? How is that codified anywhere? And I agree with the amendment to delete this section, and the spirit of also, this should be for any time that the government wants to increase, whether it be whether it be stipends, whether it be raises, whether it be bonuses and whatnot, that a public hearing is held, for those, for that proposal, so that the community can have input, can also contribute to the discussion of how their money is going to be spent. Because I'm sure the community, it may not be for this, but for other things, the community says, why? Why did you get your $10,000 pay increase? Why did you get your incentive pays and whatnot? It's not a matter of saying that it's not deserving, but there has to be some justification and some notice to the community that this is happening. This is how their money is going to be spent. So, along the spirit of that, I agree with this this amendment. Again, it's just striking out this section of the bill, but it does not delete what is already exists in the Guam Code annotated. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Blas. Does anyone else like to speak on this? If not, Senator Barnett.
Mr. Chair. I had a question for the author of the amendment.
State your question, then we'll ask if
Just to clarify again, because it was said on the record by a previous speaker that this amendment would defund the Civil Service Commission. So just for clarity, may the author tell the body and the viewing public what this amendment actually does?
Well, she said that earlier, Senator Barnett.
Just
she made
to
that
reiterate,
point
please.
of information. But go ahead, Senator Brown, go ahead and state it again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly I'll respond. I mean, the only intent as it's here, and certainly Senator Blas elaborated, is to simply not address an increase to their stipends, which in the current language that has been started by someone in the budget bill, someone unknown here in this body, chose to put this in place that would allow them to acquire up to $1,000 a month from increasing a $50 to $100 stipend. I just think this matter of this type of an increase should be publicly heard. And that's the reason I'm proposing removing it from the language in the budget bill.
Sidus Masi, thank you. I rise in support of the amendment. And yeah, I just wanted to comment briefly on this latest ruling out of the Civil Service Commission, which was the result of a settlement with the Department of Corrections. And this is obviously the Limo case, which was settled, I believe, for $200,000 in back pay, $45,000 in attorney's fees. And then the gentleman who pled guilty to official misconduct will also be allowed to retire. And I don't think it's a case of us just being unhappy with a decision that is made. I said this is a slap in the face to the people of Guam. This individual pled guilty to official misconduct, but that was that plea was. The conditions of that plea were that he would have to testify against his co-defendants. And I don't want to get everyone mad by reading out the names of all the co-defendants, but I think we are very familiar who they are. And just to go over some of the allegations of this case, which again were proven in the court. This was Department of Corrections officers who were involved in a scheme to bring crystal methamphetamine into the Department of Corrections. And many of these officers had communicated with inmates about when stings and operations, raids, if you will, in the Department of Corrections would occur. There were also communications about how meth would be brought in. And this was a big case that, I believe the previous AG totally dropped the ball on. I mean, all we saw out of this case was everybody plead guilty to official misconduct. So I'm not sure if if Mr. Limo ever testified truthfully against his co-defendants, because again, we didn't see any thing other than these guilty pleas for official misconduct. And upon the court's acceptance of the defendant's plea of guilty, the people moved to dismiss some serious charges, which included conspiracy to promote major prison contraband, controlled substance methamphetamine, as a second-degree felony, receiving bribes as a third-degree felony, and yet the logic from both the director of DOC and the attorney general was basically that, oh, we keep losing cases at the Civil Service Commission, so we're just going to tap out and give this sweetheart settlement, because potentially if we tried to fight this case, we could lose much more. In fact, the release from the Eagle's Nest reads here that Limo would have been entitled to almost 7 years of back pay, including benefits and attorney's fees that would have exceeded $500,000 and reinstatement to DOC. DOC settled this case due to the prior actions of the CSC, which we believe were unfair and hurt our people, as well as threatened their law enforcement duties. And there are actually other cases that DOC and the Civil Service Commission have had entertained, and the AG's release basically says that because the Civil Service Commission has ruled on the side of employees and consistently doled out these decisions that award, back pay.
Senator Barnett, can we just move on the amendment? You're in support of the amendment? I think you're talking about
I'm in support of the amendment, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, I support the amendment. And I also just wanted to talk a little bit about this ruling, Mr. Chair. So, yeah, it's a slap in the face to the people of Guam. I think the right thing to do would have been to pursue this case, especially for all the corrections officers and law enforcement officers who don't engage.
Mr. Chair, I rise to a point of order.
conspiracies
Mr. Chair,
to promote
I
crystal
rise to a point of order.
methamphetamine.
Senator Barnett, stand by, please. Point of order? What's your point of order?
It's just not germane. Why are
What do you
we
mean? We're
why
talking
are
about
we-
the
why
Civil
are we
Service
talking
Commission.
about this?
All right, stand by.
I mean, we just spent 5 minutes crucifying an individual. He finally mentioned his name,
All right.
and now he's trying to drag more people in. It's
Okay.
not germane. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Senator Barnett, if you can just
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
wrap it up.
I believe it's totally germane. It's actually on brand. It's relevant to the section we're discussing, and it has everything to do with the Civil Service Commission. And again, I'm not reading from any top secret document. I'm reading from the plea agreement and the press release from the Office of the Attorney General. So again, many people are disappointed with this. The Department of Corrections are very upset about this because this case was a big case and it had far-reaching repercussions. But unfortunately, we didn't see, in my opinion, the punishment fit the crime that was occurred. And the real crime now is this settlement agreement. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on this? If not, can you do the closing, please, Senator Brown? Let's wrap this up.
I appreciate it, Mr. Chair. I don't think there's too much to add. I think we've articulated reservations, certainly that I have with regards to adding this language to the budget bill. This matter should go before the public and have a public hearing. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you. Are there any objection to this amendment? There's one. All in favor of this amendment, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Amendment passes. We move now to the next one. Senator Barnett, Department of Correction Recruitment and Retention Study.
Mr. Chair. The amendment's very simple. The Guam Police Department and the Department of Administration had undergone, the Department of Administration had undergone a similar study on recruitment and retention for the Guam Police Department, and that study resulted in the 25% retention pay. And I'm not saying that I necessarily advocate the same thing for the Department of Corrections, but what I am saying is that a lot of corrections officers had reached out to our office and asked about retention pay for DOC. And as we all know, the process is that the Department of Administration has to study the issue and then make the determination about whether or not retention pay or other types of recruitment or retention incentives are justifiable. And so this amendment would just allow the Department of Administration to conduct that study. In the first couple of days of the session, I had asked Mr. Byrne, the Director of Department of Administration, kind of about the process for delving into this issue, and this is the process. Is DOA will do the study and then make a recommendation, if they make a recommendation at all, if they determine that it's warranted for Department of Corrections officers to receive any recruitment or retention pay, then we bring that back to the body and we make our determination as to how it'll be funded. So again, the Department of Corrections got a tough job over there at DOC, facing a lot of risk as the population at the Department of Corrections continues to exceed significantly the capacity that the building was designed for. And this poses the obvious safety risks to the officers as well as to the inmates. So I ask my colleagues to rise in support of this simple amendment, which would, again, not grant retention pay for the Department of Corrections, but allow DOA to study whether or not it would be justified to issue pay for DOC officers.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. Anyone need to speak on this, Senator Bros?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, while I support the intent of this amendment, one is going to need to question, because the Department of Administration is going to say this: who's going to fund this, and how much is this going to cost? So I guess to pose a question to the author, has there been a discussion? Do you know, well, first off, how much a recruitment and retention study is going to cost, and who's going to pay for it? because DOA is going to come back right back and say this is an unfunded mandate. They'd love to do that, but they don't have the money.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. Do you have a response to that?
Sijos Masi, Mr. Chair. I guess my response would be just drawing from a recent experience with the Guam Police Department retention pay. That was, I believe, initiated by communications from the administration, and I'm kind of certain that it didn't come with a price tag. So yeah, if it needs to be funded, and we heard from Mr. Byrne that they need to be paid to conduct this study about retention pay for DOC, then I know the good chairman of appropriations would be sure to include that in this supplemental budget bill that's supposed to be coming down soon.
That's a nice try, but Senator Bowers, does that suffice?
Actually, it doesn't suffice, because if we go ahead and we move on this thing, it says shall conduct. So, you know, the operative word here is shall. This basically is directing them to do this without, again, this body's going to be accused of being able to mandate something to be done without providing a funding source to it. So again, while I support the intent of it, I just don't see how this is going to, I don't want to put a false or an empty promise to the department, the corrections officers. Nor am I going to be a party to forcing the Department of Administration to conduct it and not provide, again, this is going to cost money. And unless we identify the money, it's not going to get done. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Is that an objection
That's
to
an
the minute?
objection.
Thank you. Anyone else need to speak on this? If not, we want to close. Senator, Madam Speaker?
Sijos Masi. I heard the author say that the DOA had done a recruitment and retention study for GPD, and so this amendment is to do one as well for the Department of Corrections. So I have no objection to that. I have been noting how that the Department of Administration, they are in some places mandated, or some of our laws mandated by statute to do these recruitment and retention studies. Particularly, there's one for nurses. And so when they do these without our input, and they do them, interestingly to me, across the board for all government agencies. They don't distinguish between, I guess, the needs of any of those agencies, and they make the pay raises like a certain percentage across the board, as opposed to in different categories. Another example is they did this for the teachers' pay, and made a certain percentage across the board for teachers' pay. They did that study on their own. They did it for law enforcement as well, I believe, that they did. And then they did it very recently for lawyers. And I was hoping in that study they were going to distinguish between some of the different types of lawyers in the government system, such as prosecutors, and our real challenge in getting those versus some of the other jobs that are throughout the government. But the lawyers' retention or pay study was just an across-the-board raise, again, in all categories. I don't object to this. I do realize that the Department of Corrections, I think the case that my colleague was describing earlier in the civil service really displays the challenges that we are having at the Department of Corrections, that if we cannot pay and take care of our employees there, particularly the corrections officers, this is true across the nation, that they are vulnerable to corruption, and they will be vulnerable. And I hope that this study that they do will really pay attention to what we really have been seeing in Guam. And, in particular, our situation with methamphetamine and apparent lucrative nature of it, the apparent prevalence of it throughout the government and throughout the island. And we're seeing the repercussions of that. So I hope that they are going to be able to be thorough and creative in this study. So, but I support the study, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else need to speak on this? If not, there is an objection. Senator Cananta.
I just wanted to say I fully support this study. If it needs funding, let's find the funding and let's rectify the situation. We certainly want to, ensure again that we're having a safer space for our DOC correction officers. I understand we did have a cycle graduation of a good number of individuals, and certainly those candidates are going to be, if there's another opportunity for them elsewhere, they'll certainly go. So I just wanted to issue again my support for Senator Barnett to have this study done so that we can make sure that the officers are given what they can get for this study.
Understood. Senator Barnett, do you need to close? If not, I'm going to ask if there's any objection. There is an objection. You need to close?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know there is an objection, but I just want to remind my colleagues that last year in the budget bill, we included a similar amendment to study the attorney pay plan. And I don't believe there was funding attached. And in fact, it's my recollection that we haven't seen DOA ask for funding to conduct a study. We didn't see it when they did the GPD retention pay study, which was conducted this year and resulted in the implementation of that pay for GPD. So I ask my colleagues' support for
Point of
this
information.
All right. Point of information, even though that was closing.
There's a difference between an attorney pay plan and a recruitment and retention study.
That's correct.
Thank you.
All right.
Just on that, Mr. Chair, yeah, there is a difference. So let me make a more similar comparison, and that would be the Guam Police Department retention pay study that was conducted this year, again, at no cost to the Guam Police Department. So again, I ask for my colleagues' support of this amendment. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. There is an objection. All in favor? No, that was closing, Senator Burris. All in favor, please raise your hand of the amendment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion fails. We are now at Senator Vice Speaker. Continue appropriation for Department of Agriculture. Ma'am, could you speak to that, please?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Last week, when I was asking OFB about the need for the $100,000 allocation that was included in this year's budget, but was removed from the Department of Agriculture section in this substituted bill, Mr. Chair, I was able, right after we recessed for the day, to get a hold of the agency director, and she requested that, similar to other agencies, that we grant Department of Ag the ability to carry over the unexpended balance in their current year budget. Unfortunately, since this came after the agency's chapter was open, I was told by you that I needed to wait to the administrative provisions to proffer this amendment. So the Department of Agriculture colleagues specifically need this authority because the vehicles we insured were purchased this fiscal year is still in the procurement process, and was informed that the procurement of these animal control vehicles may not be finished by September 30th. So I will proffer the amendment, Mr. Chair, which is on page 140, chapter, to add a new section, chapter 12 of the bill to reads, continuing appropriation authorization for the Department of Agriculture, notwithstanding any other provision of law, the allotted but unexpended balance of the funds appropriated to the Department of Agriculture for fiscal year 2024 and prior shall not lapse and shall be expended by the end of fiscal year 2025, and to ask legal to make technical amendments if there's any. Mr. Chair, I ask my colleagues to please support this so that at the very least, we can ensure the investment to prioritize this fiscal year actually comes to light, and so that our people can benefit from the additional coverage of our animal control officers and gain for their patrols, and the extra attention that can be paid to our neighborhoods plagued with the aggressive stray pigs and dogs. So
Understood.
I just want you to know that I talked about it before, and this is the part where I
Yes.
was told to put it in.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
For anyone that's probably wondering how much money is there lapse, we do not have any information on that right now. We're still waiting for that information to validate it, but no, we don't. So they may not have a lot at all then, if we can't even see it. So anyone need to speak on this? If not, are there any objection to the carrying over? There being none, amendment passes. We move now to Senator Roy Canata. Senator Roy Canata, you have the Summer Employment and Training Program for Youth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, but
We're going to withdraw that, right?
yes, thank you so much.
That's withdrawn. We're back to, Madam Speaker, authorization for the extent of the gas tax relief.
Citius Masi, Mr. Chair. This is the section of the bill that had been added by OFB to authorize extension of the Gas Tax Relief Act. I'm very grateful that this has been included in the budget for this year. I had introduced a bill 308 on May 22nd to do this, to make sure that it would be extended for fiscal year 2025. And so again, this gas tax is, it saves consumers, there's 15 cents on tax on all local liquid fuel. There's also another 4 cents charge for the automotive surcharge, and another 4 cents for the mass transit automotive surcharge. That's altogether a tax of an additional 23 cents per gallon for non-diesel fuel. And as we have discussed when we first did this in previous years, this is one of those measures that is that direct relief to consumers. So my amendment is just to add the words notwithstanding any other provision of law to make it crystal clear, Mr. Chair, that there's no conflict.
Yes, ma'am. And I just wanted to comment that on your bill, it was also requested by the administration of the governor. All right? And it was as a result of your introduction of your bill. Senator Canata, you have any comments for this amendment?
Yes, certainly. Do we have any fiscal impact from this?
No impact, because it was already included in the budget, so whatever the impact would have been, it was removed from there.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because I think we had a separate discussion on this a couple months ago.
In the past, if we did introduce it, we'd have to do the reduction and deduction and all that stuff. We didn't have to this round. Not on this budget.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, sir. Anyone else? Is there any objection to this amendment? There being none, amendment passes. We are now at Senator Paris. Yours is miscellaneous. Temporary employment of retired certified water and wastewater operators. You know that's an autonomous agency, right? But okay, we'll entertain it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this amendment was brought forward by GWA. I'll read the amendment. It's to add a new section to Chapter 12, miscellaneous provisions of the bill to read, temporary employment of retired certified water, wastewater operators, and engineers. The Guam Water Works Authority may hire retired certified water, wastewater operators, and engineers if a critical need arises because of military activation or absence due to a long-term disability status, which has been certified by a medical doctor, or when vacancies cannot be filled within the 6 months because of lack of qualified applicants. GWA may exercise its authority provided its authorized budget for personnel is not exceeded. The retired operators and engineers shall fill such vacant position and shall be terminated when the incumbent returns from military service or when fully qualified applicant is available. Retired operators may be rehired only for positions requiring an operator level 3 or operator level 4 certification. Retired operators and engineers may be hired exclusively at step 1 and will not be eligible for sick or annual leave. Retired operators and engineers hired pursuant to this section shall meet the requirements for the position in question. Notwithstanding Section 8121A, Article 1, Chapter 8, Title 4 of the Guam Code annotated, retirees rehired temporarily pursuant to the section may continue to receive their retirement benefits. Any employee hired under this section shall only be eligible to enroll in the Government of Guam Health Insurance Program as an active employee. The General Manager of GWA shall submit a report to I Legislature in Guåhan on July 1st, 2025, and again 30 days after the end of fiscal year, of the number of retired operators and engineers hired pursuant to this section, the positions filled, the length of employment, the cost of said hiring, and the nature of the critical need that was filled, and to allow legal and clerks to make technical corrections and renumber. So this basically adds to the list that already exists in this miscellaneous provision. So as you know, we've allowed the same type of provision for retired teachers, retired attorneys, social workers, and many others because of the impacts of, those employees that are leaving for retirement and the inability to fill those positions currently. And so GWA asked for this because they are at a critical crossroads. They have the consent decree that was signed very recently, and they have 10-minute, the clock is ticking, 10 years from that date. And these positions, the operator level 3 and operator level 4, those are supervisory positions, and those are needed. They are okay with the operator 2s and 1s. They have that coming on board, but the operator 3 and 4 are basically, those are the ones that are needed to ensure these projects are completed on time, as well as the engineer positions. And so it basically takes from the language that already exists. It expands this opportunity to rehire retirees, of course, with all the safeguards in place. And so again, the importance is that we can ensure, something as essential as water and wastewater services are not interrupted due to these staffing shortages. And so I ask for my colleagues' support to ensure that GWA's operations are uninterrupted. Sizuos Masi.
Before I call Senator Cananta, Senator Barros, I just want to make sure that this is an autonomous agency that actually is supposed to be communicating with CCU. And if anything, they have the authority to do whatever they choose to do, to include pay raises. So I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, but they still fall under personnel rules and regs. So they're not exempted from the rules and regs of the government of Guam.
Understood, Senator Barrett, but just understand that they adopt DOA's rules and regs. We didn't tell them to do it. They've always adopted, and that's why we've had problems with the price of employment and all that. But we're entertaining it. Senator Cananta, you have any comment for this amendment?
Basically what you said, Mr. Chair, I understand that the CCU is an elected capacity as well, and they are a fully autonomous agency. We don't subsidize them for anything. From my understanding as a freshman senator, I've never seen an appropriation come from this body towards those agencies. So I'm just I heard the sentiments of the author of this amendment, but I think if they have the capacity to do so, then they should be able to do it in their own chambers. They've been able to fix other problems internally, so I think they should be able to fix this if they need. So I'm not too sure why we need to justify it in the budget when we don't even have anything in the budget for them other than this. But I hear the concerns of the author, but I just won't support this amendment because I think they're able to fix it themselves, and you've echoed the sentiments as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to the amendment? Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure the hesitation to support GWA in this endeavor. They're under consent decree that they have to complete these projects. They need these operators 3 and 4 and engineers, and they are being very transparent with us that they want to hire retired, certified water and wastewater operators, which I am sure if they could, they would have done it already because of their consent decree and the cost that is causing all of us And I don't want to delay, Mr. Chair, with concerns that are really, it's harmless if we approve this for them, and they're an autonomous agency that we are just authorizing, and it's still going to be up to CCU whether they actually do it or they don't do it. We're authorizing an exemption for them because of them facing a consent decree and the urgent need. It's an urgent need, obviously, and I think we should allow it. And this is for 1 fiscal year all, and that's all. And we have done it in this bill for all kinds of temporary employment of retired personnel. They need the expertise, so I think we should allow it for them, especially in light of the urgent need. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Understood, Madam Speaker. When I made that statement, it was in reference to if the urgency was important, CCU should have jumped at it. But I'm not going against the amendment, okay? Just understand that. There's a role we play, and I support whatever GWA needs. It's quite obvious. The autonomous agency can't, maybe we don't need CCU because we can do it all ourselves. But anyway, anyone else need to speak on this? If not, are there an objection to this amendment? Oh, you want to close? Okay, yes. Go ahead.
So yeah, I think it's a misconception, just because they're autonomous, that there is no rules and regulations and laws that apply to them in regards to personnel. And, you know, they are part of the government of Guam Health Insurance. And so there are ties to our local laws. They still have to comply with local laws. And, you know, considering that they are under consent decree, I think this is a critical need that they asked. They are losing the higher level employees that are much needed to ensure these projects go uninterrupted. And so I guess, you know, the risk we take, what is the risk we take? Paying hundreds of millions of dollars because, you know, we failed to complete this consent decree. 10 years is going to go by very quick. Are we going to come back to this body to ask for more money, millions of dollars to you know, subsidize what we failed to do today? This is a simple amendment. It doesn't cost anything beyond what's within their budget. But if we don't do any action today, it can cost the millions later on if the projects are not complete. We all know it's going to take time for construction, especially construction projects. So I ask the body to consider the, you know, the harm that can come from not passing this. You know, the cost, the hundreds of millions of dollars of cost that could come from not complying with the mighty US EPA and their consent decrees. So do Masi.
All right, thank you. Anyone, any objection to this amendment? There being none, amendment passes. CCU, be aware of what we're doing. It is almost 12 o'clock. We're going to recess until 1:30. My colleagues, see you at 1:30. Thank you.